Hey guys, what is up? It's Zero here, and today I want to talk to you about my top 5 picks for the mid lane in patch 7.24. Okay, first up at number 5, we have Karthus. I know what some of you are thinking, that he's not a particularly good champion in general, but hear me out. Recently, Riot actually buffed Karthus' ult because they felt like he didn't have enough synergy with the new rune system, and they thought the best solution was to give his ultimate more damage. I'm not sure where that idea came across, but that's always been Karthus' strong point. So now it's even better. And while he doesn't specifically synergize well with any of the keystone runes, like Area or Comet or things like that, he does synergize very, very well with Gathering Storm. Karthus has kind of always been a Rod of Ages late game champion, and now with access to Gathering Storm, if you are playing Karthus and you are in a match that drags on to 30-40 minutes, and they have it pretty much all built, Zhonya's, Banshees, Veils, GAs, and or have like Soraka, late game you're looking at your ultimate doing easily over 1,000 damage. Typically I think I see mine do somewhere between 1,000 and 1,200, which is just an absolutely ridiculous amount to guaranteed hit all 5 with. That all being said, Karthus also has a pretty safe lane phase, I would say. He's not horribly endangered of just getting gibbed by anybody. He does build Rod of Ages first, which means your early back is going to get you Catalyst and a whole bunch of extra health. He's also a mid laner that's able to run Teleport, which means you're going to be able to get quite a bit of farm in the early and mid game, as well as anytime you really would be in kill pressure, you can kind of just back and TP back to lane. Karthus' strong point definitely comes post 6, and then at any point really late in the game. As soon as you have access to your ultimate, you can be looking for easy kills from people getting low in other lanes. If you see an enemy jungler kind of get a little too aggressive and let himself get a little too low, that's another easy one to pick off. Basically, as long as you have map awareness, you can turn any situation into a +1. So if it's a 2v2 bot lane and you pop your ultimate, or say it's 3v3 with both junglers and both bot and support for both teams, again, you can kind of +1 and 4v3 that with your ultimate, creating a pretty big tempo swing that a lot of people aren't really ready for. Karthus, being a ult-centered champion, also scales really well with ultimate hat, so you get an additional 15% cooldown reduction off your ult, which is actually kind of a big deal for Karthus, not just because he pretty much relies on his ult to be a champion, but also because he doesn't naturally build a ton of cooldown reduction, so it really helps cushion that and helps get your ultimate into a position where you're going to be able to use it a decent amount, somewhere around a minute cooldown or so. He also has pretty good synergy with the Precision tree as a secondary tree if you're looking to run Triumph for the bonus gold and extra healing. The extra healing is very noticeable on any Rod of Ages champion, and coup de grace in general is just phenomenal finishing power for somebody that already more or less has an execute style ultimate. Next up at number 4, we have Katarina. She is a incredibly strong mid laner, and typically anytime she is viable, she ends up being one of the better champions if you're looking to just outright carry games. Her damage is pretty nuts. She has pretty good synergy with the new rune system. She does a ton of damage with Electrocute, being that it's basically just a better Thunderlords. She's one of the champions that's able to benefit very highly from Sudden Impact, which is additional magic pen after any time you use a blink or dash or anything like that. Her Shunpo counts for it. In addition to that, being a very snowbally champion, Katarina does like to start Soul Stealer Ring, and now that you have the ability to take Eyeball Collection, lets you have the effect of starting the game with almost like having 2 Soul Stealer Rings, because you're gaining stacks on the eyeballs and the rings. When you die, you don't actually lose any off the eyeballs. It just does a phenomenal job at pushing your AP up really early, and then Sudden Impact with an early Haunting Guise, along with Sorcerer's Shoes, will get you an absurd amount of magic pen early and pretty much allow you to do true damage to people while you just ramp up massive amounts of AP. Katarina also can use multiple different secondary trees, which I think is a very strong aspect of her right now. If you're confident that you can get kills, in the lane, and or that you'll survive a little bit in team fights, you can take the secondary tree of Precision, which is very good on most champions right now with Triumph and Coup de Grace again. Triumph just gets you that extra healing so that maybe if you would have died, now you probably won't. Bonus gold on a Snowball champion is already insane. Extra finishing power on Coup de Grace, again, pretty insane. Alternatively, it's pretty easy to take Sorcery as a secondary and run Celerity and Water Walking to be able to get to bot lane really quickly and do a lot of damage. It also gives you some pretty serious buffed up AP for the early dragon fights, which is another good way to snowball if you aren't trying to just dominate your lane opponent. Alright, at number 3 we have Corki, which honestly doesn't probably surprise anyone. Corki has been a very strong mid for most of Season 7, and now even on the preseason patch with the new runes, he's very strong again. Part of that is because there's very low magic resist kind of across the board, and part of that is that he also again synergizes pretty well with some of the new runes. He is probably one of, if not the only mid laners that can make good use of fleet footwork. That gives him a lot of additional sustain in the lane while he still has pretty good damage, gives him a little bit of chase potential on the speed up as well. Going kind of hand in hand with that absurd amount of sustain, having access to Triumph for the heals on kills is a pretty big deal, and most of the higher win rate builds I've seen on Corki include Taste of Blood and Ravenous Hunter, which are the two healing traits in Domination if you take it as a secondary. Taste of Blood gives you occasional healing every 20 seconds or so when you damage an enemy champion. Ravenous Hunter gives you stacking, lifesteal, spell vamp kind of effects every time you get like unique champion kills. So between those two, Fleet Footwork, which already heals you, and Triumph, you have most of your rune kit will be adding healing and sustain, which is amazing for somebody that already does a lot of damage and kind of has the ability to survive and get in and out as it is. In addition to everything else, Corki has pretty flexible starts. You can kind of either go Doran's Blade for the aggressive, Doran's Shield for the defensive. If you have to go Doran's Shield, then bad matchup, you just heal such an ungodly amount that you can really just farm. You might lose out on kill pressure, but you're still going to be able to farm, transition to that late game. When you get on like 2 items, when you're looking at something like Trinity Force, i.e. you still do absolutely insane amounts of damage. Corki's crits right now just feel absolutely out of control. He can blow people up in a couple autos. I think ADCs as a whole, and any champion that kind of registers as an ADC feels very strong right now. I think part of that is Riot making up for ADC in 2017, the whole how bad they were at the beginning of Season 7 and how rough bot lane was. I think they're a little on the opposite end of it now. They're very, very strong. Typically ADCs are responsible for any late game, which is kind of what it's supposed to be, but so far in the preseason for Season 8, late game's coming a little bit earlier than it's ever came before. So that's where Corki comes in. He's an ADC that power spikes on like 2 items, 3 items. He's absolutely insane. He can just take over the game, and he never really slows down. Like, he has a strong early game. He has a strong mid game if you're farming and or getting any kills and you're on items. And he has a phenomenal late game where he can just pump crazy amounts of DPS into people. So he definitely is a very strong pick in the meta right now. Alright, my number 2 is actually going to be Xerath. Little disclaimer on the front end here. If Xerath's ban rate wasn't as high as it is right now at like mid to higher elos, I would maybe arguably have put him as number 1. But he is an absurdly strong champion right now. People are very aware of it, and they are very willing to ban it. However, if you do see Xerath get through bans, it's some safe free low for you. He's very strong. Part of that's because he uses the sorcery tree very effectively. He's a great user of Comet because he has a lot of spells you can get off very consistently. He's a very good user of Scorch for the same reasons. Anytime you have Comet or Scorch Up or both, it's very, very easy to hit somebody with a Q or W. E's a little bit trickier if you haven't prepped them first or they're not in a bad position, but you're very easily able to proc both those chip damages. Late game, your ultimate can sometimes even proc Comet twice if you get like an early combo into ultimate and then you fire off your 4 or 5 shots, especially if you space them out just a little bit. This one kind of goes under the radar, but still speaking about the sorcery tree, Xerath is one of the few mid laners that doesn't really feel like it needs Mana Flow Band at all. Like, his passive already does that, and I feel like his passive does a great job of already keeping his mana up, which leaves you very free to just take Ultimate Hat every single time and still be incredibly aggressive in the lane. An Ultimate Hat on Xerath, being able to just fire off those artillery shots even more frequently, helps you kind of gain control of bot lane. And right now in Preseason of 8, the team that wins bot lane typically wins the game. So being able to walk towards bot, fire off a bunch of shots, and turn a fight that might have otherwise been lost is a huge deal. Regardless of everything else, Xerath right now, numbers-wise, just deals an absolute ton of damage. He just pumps damage out non-stop, and it just feels really oppressive playing as or against a Xerath, where you can just floor somebody into not being able to fight you. Super hard engaged teams have always kind of been his weak point and still will be if they're able to just run at you and get in something like a Kled ult or Sign ult where there's literally nothing you can do to stop it. Olaf even, another strong one. But that being said, if you position well and you can get chip damage off on the enemy team, get clutch ultimates, kind of zone people out, the amount of damage you can do just from poking creates such a huge zoning pressure that a lot of the time they can't even contest you at objectives. And if they try to after you've landed some poke, they're low enough that you can just clean them up and kill them with a combo or your team. Again, Xerath is a complete monster right now and might have made #1 if his ban rate wasn't as high as it is. Okay guys, that brings us to #1. Some of you might have already saw this coming if you've played as or against it. Some of you might be completely blindsided by this one. But my #1 is actually going to be Morgana right now. Morgana is very strong for a large number of reasons. But before we get into that, I do want to point out that she did get a mini rework recently. Her passive now only triggers on champions, but triggers for the full amount. So she does less healing on minion waves, but considerably more on any kind of team fight or Dragon Baron, even in the jungle. Part of her mini rework was also any damage dealt from her to enemy champions, like large monsters, Dragon Baron, whatever, also reduces her W cooldown by 1 second. That includes her auto attacks. This means her W is off cooldown a lot because the individual W ticks also proc this. So your auto attacks are taking a second off, W ticks are taking a second off, landing Q, all of your individual ult hits. So to get into the meat and potatoes of why Morgana is really strong though, is she is a very consistent user of Aerie, which is a phenomenally strong mastery right now across the board. They've nerfed it once and it's still one of the best masteries, pretty much hands down. It's still so good that there's a lot of people that can't even use a shield or heal still taking it. And part of that's because Aerie procs off auto attacks, but Morgana benefits from all of it. She can easily proc the damage with an auto attack or her pool. She has Black Shield, which allows her to trigger the shield. It also gives that extra flavor of her shield now isn't technically only magic damage because the Aerie portion blocks all damage. In addition to that, Aerie is very strong against champions that kind of like to stay up in the fight. And as Morgana, realistically, you want to run into the fight and ult everybody and pop Zonias anyway. So you're going to get several Aerie procs per fight. It's not uncommon to see it go off 3, 4, 5 times or more in a single fight. On the note of her items, she is also a Rod of Aegis champion, like we talked about Karthus earlier. I feel like Rod of Aegis champions right now in general are pretty strong. It helps kind of counter a little bit of the wannabe assassin meta that we're seeing in the preseason, just having more health, innately being a champion that already wants to build Zonias. Those are very good things when there's been a lot of assassins played. Also, like Karthus, she is one that likes to take the precision tree as the secondary tree and pick up Triumph and Coup de Grace. Again, you kind of get that added value of when a team fight starts to turn in one favor, you're getting Triumph procs and healing yourself. You're also getting the little bit of healing coming from your Rod of Ages spell cast, but Morgana's passive now is healing for an absolute ton on top of that. So you turn into this healing machine. And typically from what I've seen, Morgana's been able to do about half the healing of Vlad would do. But if you think about the utility a Morgana brings to the team in terms of her prison, her ult slows and stuns, Black Shield just as a whole, it kind of just almost blows Vlad out of the water, because when you think about it, she brings all of that and has that much self-healing, and that's just kind of crazy. Mostly for that reason, it cements her as #1 for me right now. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know what you think in the comments below. What picks do you agree with? What do you disagree with? Would you just reorder them? Have you played any of these champions? Do you feel like they're as strong in the meta as I do right now? And if something didn't make this list that you feel like is incredibly strong, let me know what it is. Tell me what champion it is, why it is, what build you like on it. Till next time, guys.